as a people will get to the promised land.
Mr. Jowers, did James Earl Ray kill Dr. Martin Luther King?
No, sir, he did not.
Do you know who killed Dr. King?
I know who was paid to do it.
Lloyd Jowers, a 67-year-old Memphis businessman who wants his face partially shadowed because he says he fears for his safety, insists he has a shocking story to tell.
Was there a conspiracy involving more than one person?
It was a conspiracy, yes, sir, sure was.
Were you involved in this conspiracy to kill Martin Luther King, Jr.?
I was involved in it indirectly.
I have a dream that one day
He was the most recognized civil rights leader of modern times. More than that, a general who preached nonviolence in the war against racial segregation that flared so violently across the South. To his enemies, an agitator of the worst kind. To his followers and admirers, a visionary of the brightest promise. And then in Memphis, on April 4th, 1968, he was killed by an assassin's bullet at the age of 39. Cities erupted in anguish with riots, arson, and looting. Millions mourned his passing and asked why had it happened? Who could have done such an awful thing? A 40-year-old drifter named James Earl Ray was apprehended, confessed in open court to the murder, and was sentenced to 99 years in jail. But there have always been nagging questions about the case. And now Jowers, a longtime associate of his named Willie Akins, and their attorney Louis Garrison have sat down with Prime Time to tell a story that challenges the accepted belief of 25 years. Their attorney has been asking the local authorities for legal immunity for 5 people so they can tell their story without prosecution. And why?
So that they may tell what actually occurred on the night of assassination. These individuals either were there or had close proximity to the assassination, and they are willing, if they're granted immunity, to come forth and give their version of what actually happened.
Their story begins here at Jim's Grill, which was, in 1968, a bar and grill located on South Main, owned and operated by Lloyd Jowers, who was there when the assassination occurred. Above it was a rooming house. Behind it, the vacant lot across the street from the Lorraine Motel where Dr. King was killed. The official version of what happened here at the Lorraine Motel that day, put forward by Memphis police and the FBI, was that as Dr. King stood here on the balcony outside his room and leaned over to talk to someone below, a shot was fired from a rooming house across the street and just over 200 feet away, a shot fired by James Earl Ray. But now Lloyd Jowers wants to come forward and say it didn't happen that way. The new story is that the shot was fired from somewhere down below, perhaps as close as that row of bushes just above the wall, and not fired by James Earl Ray, but instead by a new shooter that Jowers had been asked to hire. According to Jowers, the man who asked him to help in the killing of Dr. King was a now-deceased Memphis produce dealer named Frank Liberto.
Liberto done me a large favor, so I owed him a favor. Or at least I thought I did.
Did there come a time when he came and asked you to repay that favor?
Yes, sir.
And was it a large favor he wanted in return?
Yes, sir.
What did Frank Liberto ask you to do?
He asked me to handle some money transaction, hire someone to assassinate Dr. Martin Luther King.
To kill Dr. King?
Yes, sir. He asked me if I knew someone. I told him I thought I knew someone who would probably do it.
And he gave you some money?
Yes, sir.
Large amount of money?
Large amount of money, yes, sir. Delivered it to the cafe.
Primetime has been told there was approximately $100,000 delivered to Jowers in a produce box. But that's not all he received. Jowers says another man came to see him, a man whose name sounded something like Raul.
Well, he looked like he was part Mexican, possibly part Indian because he didn't have a heavy beard, talked with an accent.
Did he bring a rifle with him?
Yes, sir. He brought a rifle in a box.
What did he ask you to do with this rifle?
He asked me to hold the rifle until he made arrangements, or we made arrangements, one or the other of us, for the killing.
So now Jowers had the money, had the rifle, had been asked to hire a shooter, but he says Frank Liberto also provided a cover.
Did he talk about the police?
Liberto? Yes, sir.
What did he say?
He said they wouldn't be there. Said they wouldn't be there that night.
Did he say there would be a decoy there?
Yes, sir. Said it would be set up, but it looked like someone else done the killing.
Enter James Earl Ray.
Was he part of the conspiracy?
He was part of it, but I don't believe he knew he was part of it.
Ray had rented a room under the name of John Willard in the rooming house over Jim's Grill. Another rooming house tenant told police he saw Ray running down the hall just after the shot was fired. 7 minutes after the shooting, police found a .30-06 rifle dropped in a doorway just down the street. Ray had purchased the rifle using an alias 4 days earlier in Birmingham, Alabama. His fingerprints were on the rifle, although the FBI was unable to match it with the bullet taken from Dr. King's body because not enough markings remained on the fragmented bullet. After 2 months on the run using a fake passport, during which he traveled through 3 countries, spending a great deal of money, Ray was captured at the London airport. On March 10, 1969, Ray pleaded guilty to killing Dr. King. 3 days later, he tried to take it back, later claiming he wasn't in the rooming house at the time, that a man named Raoul had asked him to buy a rifle as part of a prospective deal to sell guns, and that he'd been brainwashed by police and pressured by his own attorney to plead guilty. Over the years, many people have doubted that Ray really did it, including Hosea Williams, one of Dr. King's colleagues, who was standing in the courtyard of the motel when the shot was fired.
I think it came from the ground level. I really think it came from the ground level. James Earl Ray was just a patsy. He was set up. Who in the world gonna shoot a gun and kill Dr. King and run out the building and leave the gun on the sidewalk? That was not the gun.
But if Ray wasn't the shooter, who was?
Well, Mr. Jowers, did you find someone to do the killing?
Yes.
Well, he cannot answer that. I'm not going to permit him to answer that question. He's gone as far as we can.
That's where Lloyd Jowers' public telling of the story comes to a halt until he says he's given immunity. But Willie Akins can go farther. Akins wasn't around when King was assassinated, but he says that after Jowers closed Jim's Grill, the 2 men became close friends. And in 1974, his friend, whom he won't confirm was Jowers, asked him to do a job.
What was the job he asked you to do?
He had a fellow that was wanted to be out of the way. He needed to be out of the way.
What do you mean by out of the way?
He was afraid, my friend was afraid that he would talk too much. And he wanted to get rid of the man and asked me would I do the job.
Did your friend tell you who this man was and why he needed to be gotten out of the way?
Well, he told me who he was. And at the time, I thought he was getting rid of the man by the woman, you know. But later on in the year, he told me what it was all about.
What did he say?
He said that was the man who killed King.
Akins said he found the man here in Memphis, whom he described as a slow-acting, kind of retarded black man. But before he could get the chance to pop him, as he put it, the man disappeared.
But you were prepared to do the job if the opportunity had presented itself.
Yes, sir.
Do you know his name?
He knows, but we can't disclose that at this time.
Can you tell us whether this man is still alive?
We have this man's name, Social Security number, place of birth, his height, date of birth, where he was born, his parents' name. We run into some dead-end streets on this, but currently we have a person that we think is at least this person is using his Social Security number, and we're working on that currently to locate him.
And this is the man that, according to this story, killed Dr. King.
That's correct.
If this man being searched for was the real shooter, what happened to the real gun he used? That brings us to Betty Spates, who worked in Jim's Grill. Though not identified by name in Attorney Garrison's document requesting immunity, she is clearly the prospective witness who allegedly will testify she saw Jowers near the back door with a rifle moments after the killing, and in her presence, he disassembled it and hid it under a counter. According to sources, another prospective witness seeking immunity is James McGraw, who is supposedly prepared to say the day after the shooting, Jowers showed him the weapon and told him this is the rifle that killed Martin Luther King. Presumably, these witnesses would thus corroborate portions of the story that Lloyd Jowers would tell, a story of a hideous crime that reverberated worldwide.
Why would a person participate in the conspiracy to kill Dr. King?
A portion of it, naturally, was for money. Any involvement I might have had in it was doing a friend a favor.
Would it have been because you hated Dr. King?
No, I didn't hate Dr. King.
Or hated black people?
No, sir. It was for a friend, doing a friend a favor that I owed him, a large favor.
Well, is doing a friend a favor called murder? The kind of favor that you would do?
Depending on how good a friend it is and what you owe the friend.
It turns out the House subcommittee that in 1979 looked into the King assassination had run across the name of Jowers' friend, produce dealer Frank Liberto. Subcommittee Chairman Walter Fauntleroy recalls a witness who testified
that he'd heard Frank Liberto around 6 o'clock on the evening Dr. King was killed, shouting to someone over the phone, "Kill the SOB. My brother in New Orleans is going to take care of you with $5,000.
Who was my brother in New Orleans?
The chief aide to Carlos Marcello, who was the
mafia mob chieftain.
Without question.
Does all this sound improbable? From New Orleans to Memphis to Jim's Grill to Lloyd Jowers and an unknown shooter with James Earl Ray nothing more than a patsy? To the Selby County District Attorney General John Perotti, the man to whom Garrison has addressed his immunity request, the story sounds not just improbable, but ridiculous.
We have met on it, and we have all collectively decided or may come to the conclusion that there's no validity to it.
Have you interviewed these prospective witnesses?
No, I really haven't had a chance to because I've been interviewed by so many media people.
Well, on what basis do you conclude that it isn't true if you haven't interviewed the witnesses?
Well, from the body of the file and from the body of the proof that we have. Now, 25 years later, when memories dim, when you can't find anybody, all of a sudden here comes somebody that says, "Oh, yeah, I just want to get this off my mind." What am I supposed to do? There's a guy who says that he is guilty of a capital crime, and I'm supposed to give him immunity? I mean, that's ludicrous.
Why would Lloyd Jowers and others come forward with this kind of story?
Maybe he wanted to get you to come down from New York and put him on television. Maybe he wanted his Andy Warhol 15 minutes in the sun. I don't know why people do things.
So you're telling me that you do not think you're going to grant him immunity?
I know I'm not. I'm not going to request it.
Now, this story we've heard today is very sensational. And if true, and if it is borne out, clearly James Earl Ray will be freed from prison.
We have no interest in James Earl Ray. I've never met James Earl Ray. He has an attorney that I met one time about a year ago. Told him my name. He told me his name. That's the extent of it. I've never had any communication with him, period. No telephone calls, no anything.
And has anyone in his behalf come to you and asked you
Never.
to participate in telling this story?
Never.
District Attorney General Perotti, apparently responding to the publicity, says he will now investigate. And the consequences might not be pleasant for Jowers if other witnesses testify as advertised.
Are you now then going to investigate his story?
Well, sure, I think we'd be derelict if we didn't look into it. If, as a matter of fact, Mr. Jowers is correct, my office and the police department need to work on it and see if we can, as a matter of fact, if Mr. Jowers did this, develop a criminal prosecution.
I just felt like the people should know what really happened. And if we get immunity, they will know. Believe me, they will. If we don't, they may never know.